Corey Andrew Powell, and welcome back to the Motivational Mondays podcast presented by the NSLS, now serving over 2 million students and in our community nationwide. So we're really excited about that. Now, today we have I can't say enough about this guest today. I absolutely adore her personally and professionally. And we've already had her on the show before. Eliza VanCort is joining us once again, and she is a #1 best-selling author, motivational speaker, and executive coach known for her expertise in communication and confidence building. Now, with a remarkable career that includes serving as a Cookhouse Fellow at Cornell University, a member of Govern for America's League of Innovators, and a media commentator featured on major platforms like Drew Barrymore Show, PBS, and Forbes. Eliza, she empowers individuals to excel, kind of do their thing, build it with confidence, and kind of go out there in the world and personally and professionally own the space that they're in. So today we are going to talk about her new project. It's an online confidence course, and we're going to discuss some of her latest exciting ventures as well. Eliza, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Thank you so much for having me, Corey. This is one of my favorite places to be in the world. I'm so excited to see you. And
thank you. Well, same here. Thank you so much. And, as I read your intro, I'm like, my gosh, I'm an underachiever, apparently. So I got to stop slacking. Just saying it. No. You do a lot of stuff.
I have a couple years on you, so
I don't know. I'll take it if you say that's the reason. But in any event, very impressive resume. And I want to just, before we go forward to talk about your new venture and everything you're doing currently, I do want to mention that we had you on that first time to talk about your book at that time, which was called A Woman's Guide to Claiming Space. Stand tall, raise your voice, and be heard. Give a quick little synopsis about what that book was about or is about.
That book is a 5-part book that basically is a guidebook for women. I looked around and I saw that there were all these guidebooks that said they were for everyone, but really they were for men. And I wanted a guidebook for women. And so it goes through everything from posture to imposter syndrome to anti-mentors to lifting up other women. And it's all about claiming space. And to claim space is to live the life of your choosing unapologetically and bravely, which is something we all deserve to have the right to do and should know how to do.
Yeah, I love it. And you share so many personal anecdotes in that book that kind of got you to this place of knowing and sharing that perspective. So I encourage everyone to check this book out. And we'll make sure we have the link to that when this podcast airs as well, so people can make sure they discover it. But I'm more excited now, of course, to talk about your current stuff. And you have this new current venture, if you will. It's an online confidence course. I saw the trailer, looks amazing. Your website looks awesome talking about it. So share a little bit about this new course.
Well, I kept getting all kinds of feedback after my workshops or my coaching or just people reading my book. And they would say, I just feel more confident. And I realized that if you have confidence, there's so much you can do in the world, and often that is what holds us back. But I also realized that the way we've been approaching confidence is literally backwards. And so it's demoralizing. It makes people feel bad. It's this idea that if you don't have confidence, then you're doing something wrong, something in you. You're not feeling it hard enough, or you're not trying, or you're not believing in yourself enough, and therefore it's your fault. And so I wanted to crash that confidence myth, just blast it open, and then go into what confidence really is. And so from my perspective, confidence is not something that comes from within. It's something that eventually lands within, but it's actually something that you can do by moving from the outside in rather than the inside out. And that is what the course is all about.
So that's an insert, that concept right there. And I don't want you to give everything away.
Of course. I'm happy to talk about it because there's a lot in there. So
yeah, I know. But I just was thinking, but the idea, I guess in a nutshell, it seems almost like, if I'm understanding correctly, the work that has to be done is more internal for you to get there, not something you're born with. There's some work that can be done. And we all can kind of have that confidence building if we put that work in. Is that kind of a good summary of it?
Sort of. The first thing is that, not everyone is treated the same on this earth. And so to say that some people just are born with confidence and some others, when some have, like let's say you were born to a multi-bajillionaire parent and you've got every advantage in the world and all of those things, there may be some things that were easier. People may have treated you differently, and you may then therefore have a different perspective on the world. So the first thing is it's certainly not something you're born with. It's sort of like saying imposter syndrome is the fault of the person, whereas I think, well, what in that situation is making somebody feel like an imposter? So, but the other part of that is that a lot of it is inner work that people talk about. But I have found that you can actually boost people's confidence really quickly by giving them external things to do with their body, their voice, and their words. It's like this little triangle. And just by putting certain behaviors out there, people start to treat them differently. And then that creates a positive feedback loop because then they feel more confident. And these are things that are easy to implement. They're really not that hard to do at all. And they're totally transformative. So we have this kind of mini course, which is about a 4.5-hour course. And then I'm going to probably do the mothership course. But I wanted to give people the main tips that the feedback I get is, this is the thing that did it for me. This is the thing that turned things around.
Yeah. And it's a great segue too, because when you mention like the activities and the actions, that makes me think that, just to share with everyone, you do have a background in theater, darling. You do have an acting background. And I hear sort of some connective tissue, if you will, with sort of how actors in many cases, many classes, that similar kind of work is put in, right? Kind of understanding the why of a scene, or maybe why a person would feel that way. Internalize it a bit. When you're building a character, I see some similarities there. Am I off the mark, or is that close?
No, you're hitting it on the nose. I mean, I went to school, and undergrad academics was political science, and with focus on different kind of like gender studies, African American studies. These are the things that I was really interested in. But then I ended up going to law school, and then I finished my first year at NYU. I took a leave of absence. And I remember thinking, I got this scholarship to do whatever I wanted. I don't want to do any of this. So I did a 2-year acting technique, and my whole life kind of took off. I became an actor and then an acting teacher. And what's really interesting is when you think about people finding a character, so often you hear about what we call loosely method acting in this country, which is really a bastardization of Stanislavski. And I'm not going to get too technical.
Right.
But the Meisner technique, which is something that birthed the work that I do, is all about living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And one way you do that is by changing your exterior. So, for example, if I had a student who had to play the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he wanted to know what it felt like to be that character, he didn't think about it at all. He put a hump on his back and walked through New York City. And by the end of the day, he could barely make eye contact with people. He felt demoralized and scared and depressed because of the way he was treated, right? So he was no different, but the world treated him differently, so he ended up feeling differently. And that can work in reverse, where you put certain behaviors out that make you feel, project confidence. People will then treat you as such, and it can actually interrupt moments where someone's treating you poorly, because you can actually give them a message that that's not something you're going to tolerate.
That is so powerful. And I know that when we first had our conversation, you and I shared with you that my partner had done that technique. He had done a 2-year theater program and at the Bill Esper studio. And and it's interesting because of him, I watch people in life with that filter. And I often hear him say things like, when we watch a film, he's like, oh, that actor is connected. Like he is connected. And I began to sort of notice that in real life when we're in situations, and, you can only really fully be present if you can honestly really try to connect with what other people are feeling and going through. And you really can't do that with a closed mind. You have to really be willing to understand that people's existences are all so varied and challenging, right? And you have to accept that and not think that, everything is going to be easy for certain people or not.
Right. And a lot of confidence courses come at it from this idea that we are one group and everybody's the same. And that's just simply not true. I mean, even what state you grew up and what your birth order is.
Yeah.
Less your age or your race or all of those, your gender, all those things, but just if you take someone from, I actually worked at MIT, and I remember talking to this young kid from Texas who was first gen to go to college. And, he was having a hard time because it was just a foreign world to him. And so he was starting to feel bad. And one of the things people noticed right off the bat was his accent. So because of his accent, people thought he wasn't that smart.
Yeah.
And so, we talked a lot about, so he started to kind of behave that way. And I talked to him about, no, you've got to shift. Got to shift your body and actually give just the opposite message to
right.
Feeling confident. And there are all kinds of things that you can do. I mean, one of my favorite things, can't remember if I talked about this on the last podcast, but if you're talking to somebody and they're being unkind to you, a very simple thing you can do to kind of take your power back in the situation and feel more confident is to not move your head. So usually we do affirmation nodding, which is really a kind thing to do. It's like, yes. Oh yeah, I hear you. Right. And you want to do that. You're like, yeah. But often when we're under duress, we'll keep doing it, which is basically like, yeah, keep it coming. Keep treating me badly. But if you just drop your smile and just look at the person when they're talking to you, it sends a very different message. Or if you talk without moving your head, like, I'm really not comfortable with the way things are going right now, and I'd like to talk about shifting this. That's really different, right? Because your head being still is a power move. So there are all these things you can do to forge connection or take back power if someone's trying to take it from you, or all different things. So the course talks about anti-mentors, talks about boundaries, talks about cueing big and cueing small, all of these things you can do to really show up in the world the way you want to show up.
It reminds me of my case, maybe two careers ago, I guess I would say. My creative director was a very tall woman, and she was like the only woman executive, and she was like naturally about almost like 6 feet tall with no shoes on. And she had a big personality to match, but very kind, very sweet, great mentor. But she actually would be told by some people, a lot of the guys in the room, they are intimidated by you. So make sure you wear flats. She said, oh, honey, absolutely not. I'm wearing the biggest heel.
Yes.
I'm going to be, if they think I'm tall now, wait till that next board meeting. She said, why would I not lean into what I am? And that is some of the work that I do with young people, which is, understanding how to lean into yourself, because that's your strongest attribute very often. The things you are is really how you're going to go through life and own and claim it and claim your space. I think that's part of what you talked about in your first book.
Absolutely. And you're somebody who obviously lives that authenticity. And I think there's nothing more powerful for a young person than to have someone tell you that who's doing it. Mm-hmm. It's so different than if someone says to do it, but they're not really doing it themselves.
Yeah. The older generation, it's like, yeah. So it's almost like your parents talking to you, where someone's like, no, listen, I'm living it. Don't do that. So,
right.
Exactly.
Exactly. So yeah, for me, physicality and voice is one of the things we completely neglect, because we spend a lot of time telling people how to emotionally prepare, but we don't tell them what to do when they get in the room. We don't tell them how to actually look at somebody's physicality and shift a dynamic just by simple things with their body and voice. And that is one of the biggest confidence boosters you can possibly have. So it's exciting. I mean, I'm getting so much feedback about it already, and it's exactly what I was hoping would happen. It's pretty cool.
Well, that's excellent. Congratulations on that, because it is helping people navigate a very difficult world when most of the times we are told to reduce ourselves. We're sort of like told to sort of be less than. And I had an experience like that too, where, years ago, I was like I was being told that I was like kind of too much. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I just kind of retreated. And then finally I had the realization that I'm not going to dim my light because someone else is not shining as brightly. And that's sort of owning your power too. But like, well, if I'm a little bit too much, maybe that's just how it is. I'm going to be too much.
I think it's Elise Myers, I'm not sure, who said, if I'm too much, go find less.
Yeah. I mean,
Go
that's
find
really
less.
it, right? Go find less. Yeah, I think someone once said to me, you can suck all the life out of the room. Said that to me years ago. It was such an insult. And I was really feeling bad about myself for a couple of years. Then finally I came back to that same person. I said, remember you said this to me? He said, yeah. I said, now I think maybe you just need a greater lung capacity.
Yes. Yes. And you know what's so interesting is that is obviously a sign of someone who doesn't know how to shine their light. And I have found with myself, I know you pretty well now, some of my other fellow creators, people who are able to be in their center and in their power will attract other people like that. But people who are not like that will often feel very threatened, because they don't know how to navigate that kind of authenticity and truth, but B, because maybe they're not there.
Right.
And so it kind of is like a big neon light saying you're not there yet. And it can feel very, I just remember before I had a lot of change in my life that was pretty radical. And I remember when I would be intimidated by confident people. So I have a lot of empathy for that because I have a very deep memory of being there myself.
Right.
But I think that when someone tells you to shine, that your light is shining too brightly, it's because they haven't figured out how to turn their light on yet, usually.
Oh gosh, I love that. Yeah. And that also ties right back into what you're saying about people are typically not confident because they just haven't had the tools, but it could be something that they can learn how to develop. So I love that you're kind of on both sides of that spectrum. Hey, I've been the girl, leaning against the wall, not participating, maybe feeling, and then I've evolved and now I can tell you that you can do it too. So, and I love that you also mention your daughter as a key influence in how you deliver your keynotes.
Oh yeah.
So I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. Well, I used to give my keynote and I would talk about, physicality and voice and how to use silence and all of these things. And people would come up to me afterwards and they'd say, that's really great for you, but, I couldn't do that. And I went home one day and I said to my daughter, Ella, I don't understand why people are saying this. Why would they say this? And Ella goes, Mom, you kind of look like a privileged white lady nothing bad has ever happened to. So of course people are going to think that you can do it and they can't because they think you've never struggled. And then she said, this is my favorite. Kids, they know you. She said, Mom, you tell everyone to be brave, but you're not being brave yourself. You need to share your story. So now when I give my keynotes, I talk about the fact that my mother, who is paranoid schizophrenic, she was a wonderful mother until I was about 4.5, kidnapped me and took me across the country by truck, from truck stop to truck stop to truck stop, from New York to California. And, I started to conflate invisibility with safety. I started to strive for invisibility. And, little girls are rewarded in this society for being small, for being cute, for being, coy.
Right.
So when you start your life striving for invisibility and getting that message, stepping into your light, stepping into your power is a lifelong struggle. And so for me, I had so many amazing people along the way, so many mentors and students and my kids who taught me how to really step into my power. And so for me, that's become a real passion to share with other people. And I've got to say, if you don't mind, I want to tell something that my daughter said to me recently, which I think is very powerful. So I know there are a lot of people right now, given everything going on in the world, that are maybe feeling like they're having a hard time. And I called my daughter and I said, she's an amazing young woman. And I said, Ella, you are working to try to stop climate change. And you're an activist and you're putting all this energy into it, but you kind of think we're all doomed. You don't really think that there's hope. So why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. And she said, well, I've thought about that a lot, Mom. And I've decided that if just one person still has hope, I owe it to them to try.
Yeah.
And so that's my kind of theme with life, is even when I'm having a hard day or a down day, I owe it to the world to try to do my best to make an impact.
That's wonderful. I mean, it's really cathartic too, because you're sharing, which helps you kind of expel things that you've held in for a long time and not shared. And those things are things that other people need to hear so they know someone else is going through them. And you did share that in your first time on the show, and the car accident. Oh my gosh, hit by someone who was texting and driving, and then you couldn't speak, and you kind of had to come back from all that, learn how to communicate again. I mean, those are the stories that when you walk in and share that, it kind of lets people kind of look past the perfectly manicured nails and the fact hair and the glowing skin.
Well, my nails are growing out right now. But yeah, no, I think I think that when you had a hard time, in many ways, when you're young and you haven't gotten your act together, you spend a lot of time and energy trying to show everyone how okay you are, especially if people know your story, because they assume you're damaged goods. So you really have to put a lot of effort into showing that you're okay, everything's fine. I remember this girl in high school said to me, I saw your mom on the comments walking around talking to herself, and that's so weird because you're such a nice person. And I thought, what does my mom being mentally ill and having a break have to do with me?
To be nice or
nice? But I spent a lot of energy trying to show people how okay I was. And I realize now that, being authentic about the fact that we all struggle, because I know I still do, is so huge, because we're all part of the human condition. And what we really need to do is uplift each other and learn how to keep whistling in the dark, hard days.
Yeah, no, that's so wonderful. And I'm so glad you're sharing that, because, and part of like a little bit of a sidebar there, again, for what I talk about is telling young people to lean into those powerful experiences. And even as much as they're willing to share, some things are too painful, but a lot of them, if you are willing to share them, you find a community of people. And that is so uplifting versus this idea that nothing's ever happened to me. And that's not relatable, because most people have a lot of bad stuff and we feel good and we kind of talk to each other about it. So I love that you were doing it from that approach.
Yeah. And the truth is that our traumas and all of those things, while very, very difficult, and while something that I hope everybody could be in therapy for, because we've all had struggles, do inform who we are. And without them, we would not be who we are. And so when I look back on those things, everybody has these boulders that fall on them, these huge, huge boulders that just fall on them. And I think there's this mythology that we need to just get rid of those boulders. But I don't think that's possible. What I think we can do is whittle them down until they're like a little pebble in our pocket. And we can carry them around with us, and we can touch them, and they don't weigh us down. But we say, oh yeah, I remember that person who died, let's say. And I miss them, and I'm so glad they were in my life, even though I'm still sad. Or, I remember that horrible thing that happened, but I wouldn't be the strong person I am now if I hadn't gone through that. Yeah. So they inform us rather than crush us. And I think that's sort of the way we have to look at life in general is, I don't think we can get over anything. I don't think you ever get over anything. I think you can have those experiences and realize they are part of your collection of memories that make you who you are.
Yeah, that's perfect. This idea about closure, I think, is really elusive, not a real thing, especially when it comes to death. I just want to get closure. Like, that person's never going to be back. So that's not closed, but it's how we maintain, right? How we are able to persevere and continue living, adjusting to that situation with those losses, right?
Yes. I talked to a man the other day, this very big burly dude, actually. He was like, oh, and he told me his mom died and he started to cry. This was actually not just like a month or two ago. And he's like, and I said, oh, that's so horrible. And he's, yeah, I feel bad though. It's been a couple months. I feel like I should be over it. And I said, that's your mom.
Right. Like, yeah.
You'd be a sociopath if you were over it. My father's in his 80s and he still cries about missing his mother sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I love that you make that association. Like, you're actually supposed to feel that, and for as long as you want to. And I think that speaks to the disservice I think we put on people, especially men. And I love that you talked about this big burly guy, that they're not supposed to cry. I tell friends of mine in the urban communities, if a lot of young Black men had been given the opportunity to cry inner city men in general, without being told it was a sign of weakness. There might be a lot fewer men in that community who are involved in criminality or overly aggressive. Maybe it's just there's lots of outlets that a lot of young people don't have because they're encouraged not to cry.
Right.
To pin it all up. And so that's unhealthy.
We all need to listen to Free to Be You and Me more.
Oh, wait, you did not just say that because you did not just say
no way! It's all right to cry. Crying gets the sad out of you.
Oh my gosh. Everyone should know this was completely impromptu.
This was totally impromptu.
We did not plan that. I literally have it on my desk. I listened to it. Marlo Thomas, you are a goddess.
Oh my God. It might
Phil
make
Donahue.
you feel better.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm going to put a link to that too.
Oh,
send them everywhere.
Free to Be You and Me is like, that's the way to go. Oh God.
That's amazing. All right. Now I'm all teary-eyed. So
I love that. I used to cry when I get to the line, raindrops from your eyes.
Oh my gosh.
Washing all the mad out of you. Oh my God.
Such a good one. And of course, my favorite was William Wants a Doll, but that's a whole other story.
Oh yeah.
For obvious reasons.
He is gonna be
a daddy, a father too.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Okay. I'm sorry, audience. We're going taken you. And I'm not going to cut this out because I want people to understand the importance of the importance of the piece that we're referencing is a piece from Marlo Thomas and Friends, the actress, and her husband, Phil Donahue at the time. And it's a great piece about diversity and inclusion, and it targeted children at an early age and helped them understand that they can be different and still be cool and loved. So we're going to make sure people know about that.
I was talking to someone the other day and I said, okay, so the antonym for diversity is homogeneous. Everyone's the same. Okay. The opposite of inclusion is exclusion. The opposite of equity is injustice. So do we want a homogeneous, unjust, exclusionary workplace? Like, to me, that's just stunning that would be the goal.
Yeah. Well, I think hopefully, again, education, I believe people, once they get maybe more fully versed in something, they understand things better. So maybe, God willing, this conversation maybe helps people do a little bit more look into that and what that actually means. So you can kind of make a better decision about what they're for versus what they think they are against. And
yes.
So
and as Dr. Maya Angelou says, words matter.
Words matter. Absolutely.
Understanding those words matter. I don't do DEIB as my main work. I do professional development, but it's so antithetical to what I think is, the basic tenets of all religions, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is in every major religion, to exclude people.
Yeah.
I feel like no one wants that. And why would we do that to others? It's that's not a good way to go.
No, well, I definitely agree with you on that. Gosh, I know we can go on, you and I. But I want to bring it back to a great venture you're working on. Two projects. One is Ignite.
Oh, yeah.
With Alma Derricks. And yes. And I briefly met Alma, I think, through you, I think for a moment.
Yeah.
So tell us more about this initiative, because it's kind of funny. We have a new initiative as well at NSLS called Ignite. So I just thought that was very sort of timely and interesting. So tell us about your Ignite.
Yeah. Well, Alma's an amazing woman. She was a partner at Deloitte. She was the CMO of Cirque du Soleil. She's just, I get around her and I look at my resume and go, I'm so deeply not that cool. But she's just an amazing, Alma Derricks, amazing woman. And she was the forward writer to my book, and we did a lot of work together when I was promoting my book. Most people write your forward and then they just peace out. And Alma was there every step of the way for me, I have to say. And that was a big, big deal for me. And so when we go to work, my background is in political science and the performing arts, so it's much more academic. Her background is in corporate and business. And so we realize that the work that we do complements each other perfectly. So we've developed this whole master class for professional development that has to do with the work that I do with my workshops, which I do all over like Fortune 50 companies. And those are just going in and helping people learn to be excellent communicators so they can persuade and lead and do all those things. And it's very customized. Alma goes in and she helps people figure out what kind of collaborator they are so that people can have language to talk to each other about their collaboration. And because she has such a depthful knowledge of this, because of the work that she's done throughout her entire career, she has a way of going about it that is unlike anything I've ever seen. And so people have that interpersonal piece with her, and then the more internal piece with me of how am I going to show up in the world? So we combine forces, and the reception that we're getting, it's just, I think we've really hit on something that is changing lives. I got an email recently from someone, I can't say the name of the company because unfortunately I have an NDA, but it's one of the top like 5 companies in the world. And they said, I never expected to have this kind of transformation in a corporate setting. Thank you so much. And that's what, it's making the departments that we go and leave bigger and stronger. So I'm so thankful. It's great when you have a sister from another mister who's also a collaborator. It's just, she's the best. I got it, she's the best. Then the other project I'm doing, is that I just happened, right?
Yes, I was just going to, so perfect segue, because this is like, all right, that was my second piece, which is, this is big, this is huge. Now, please share with us this next big, awesome thing that just happened to you and your project.
This is crazy. And if you're a teacher and you're out there, or you're a parent who has a lot of kids in your house, you understand what it's like to mentor other people. And that's really where my passion lies. So I've been an acting teacher for over 20 years, and I have a lot of students. And one of my students did a film called Stationed at Home. And he has been working on that. He does not come from, his name's Daniel Mashari. He doesn't come from money at all. His dad's an Italian immigrant. And he just found a way to raise money to do this film. And he did a black and white film, which is bonkers. And we were basically told by our advisors, you're not going to get into any festivals, because if you get into a festival, like you would have to the only way you'd get in is if somebody without a connection isn't in the film with a black and white film, because like they'll only take one black and white film and all the connections are going to get in first. So we were very lucky. We just got into the Glasgow Film Festival, which means we're BAFTA qualified, which is like the Oscars of Europe. And I'm in it. I produced it. And we just found out that we're getting a review, and I can't say the name of the publication, but because it's not public yet, but when it drops in March, when we premiere, we got this great review, and then we actually sold out at Glasgow, and they opened another theater for us. So it's, but for me, the thing that just gets me going is almost everybody in it is one of my former students, and people are talking about the acting all the time. So I'm like, my babies.
But look how that comes full circle. I just want to clarify, it's not documentary, it's actually scripted.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a fictional film called Stationed at Home. If you Google Stationed at Home Glasgow Film Festival, you'll see it. We're making a lot of the top 10 lists.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yeah, it's a beautiful story about this one lone taxi driver in Binghamton, New York, who meets all these different people and has this crazy, crazy night of madcap adventure, but also sort of like ethereal melancholy. I think the reviewer's line was, it is a trip into cosmic melancholy.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really exciting. And for me as an acting teacher, you could not wish for a better dream than your students, some of whom had never been in a feature film, getting all these crazy reviews saying what brilliant actors, this is such a great film, what a great director, and realize they all came out of your itty bitty studio. It's really cool.
Eliza VanCort, thank you for being here today with us on Motivational Mondays, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.